This one is getting deeper now, guys. Okay? We're getting into more details. We've basically been doing the, not basically, I don't like that word, but we've been doing the groundwork, looking at self, and self is important. I've always reiterated that. Now, let's get into it. I'm Michelle Samuels for White Goals ID, and our topic today is firewall around self. This might be a bit of, I don't know, not, you just have to brace yourself for this one because I guess it was a bit of a big enlightenment for me, to be honest, because I've been thinking about it. So I think it was in my subconscious mind about looking at self, looking at the design of self, and I wasn't really trying to figure it out. I think I was evaluating the routes to best outcomes in my mind. And it so happened that I had a really, I can't explain the day I had, but I was a bit like reflective, a lot reflective actually. And then I was listening to a song. And while listening to the song, I went to shower. And when I went to shower, I realized that it only makes sense. It only makes sense because okay, so self is an identity. Let us assume that self is an identity. Remember, there are aspects of self. So there's the self. You can accept self as an identity, which it is from many standpoints, one of which is that the self, as I've looked up and research, self relates to person and person relates to human being. And sometimes the explanation goes around the premise of wearing a false mask. It's like an identity that you carry, but it's not really. It is the definition of who you are within the context of the society, but there's a certain level of depth to it that I don't really want to go into too much because I don't want to move away from this important topic, which is the firewall around self. The core of which I'm trying to explain is self and the identity related to self. Now there comes a point on the journey where you'll be setting goals and so on, but there's a part of you that is a higher or heightened version of who you previously were. Yeah, or who you're even becoming, a heightened version, even outside the scope of all the environmental factors, the factors that influence just in terms of how we operate as an individual in the society. Now, okay, so we're gonna get into the design of self at some point on the journey. I'm gradually building up to it, just to let you know. We're gonna talk more about self and the identity and how to. It's almost like uh, um, identifying the unique traits in one's self, and also the role of self and person in the environment. So we're gonna get into that at some point, hopefully. We're not very diplomatic way, as well as some specificity. Specificity. Yeah. Okay. However, now remember that self in the environment will be exposed to other individuals. So daily we are interacting with different individuals, and from early this morning, I was looking at some information around energy manifestation and basically, the thought patterns, thinking, just reading some paperwork, well, online paperwork. And what needs to be noted, remember, when you're building your dreams, you're building it in the context of how the society operates and what we know to be true or what works for us in terms of survival, in terms of us advancing through the timeline progressively, protection wise for self, and also to sustain the environment, to develop and improve in the environment, and also to reach the heights of a heightened version or operating on a higher tangent. That's basically what it is. So we understanding self is the core of everything to a certain degree, from the perspectives that you'll develop, the fears that you'll place in your conscious and subconscious mind, how you interact with others, what makes sense to you from what doesn't, what convinces you, what you are able to create. And one of the things I want you to note as well, and I will go into that a bit, is that in in terms of you creating these goals and desires that you have, you 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 will sometimes find yourself in a position where, I don't know how on what level, like a lot of my, well, not a lot, but some of my audience, focus on manifestation, but manifestation and energies and just being able to create, that's the natural order anyway. We are creators, even if it is you're not looking at it from a spiritual standpoint. We don't get into religion that much in on this channel. Maybe just refer to it as a one-off. So you have to understand that you will encounter some things on the journey that you'll be a bit shocked, because in terms of you creating those things, you see things show up and you're wondering, why did this show up? Because I've been at that level. I'm asking myself, why did this show up? But what I'm desiring from a different angle hasn't showed up. And what I've come to realize is that some things will show up inevitably. Why? Because this morning I was looking at the concept of energy manifestation, as well as certain fundamental laws that govern life itself, as well as what is positive and what is negative, what is wrong and what is right. Because it's so, like, there's certain things that's just wrong, but there are certain gray areas where even when something wrong is done, some people look at it and say, yeah, but it was justified on some level, or even the perpetrators will feel like it was justified. Now, so in looking at wrong and, well, positive and negative, I was asking myself, why is it that sometimes so many negative things show up, even when you have a deep desire to be to want other things to show up. And there was some I was doing some, well, I was watching some YouTube videos, and it was highlighted that it's important, the mindset and the thinking. So I looked a bit at wrong and right, and what is positive and what is negative. And I was asking myself these questions. I was saying, why is it that certain things show up? And so I researched the whole concept of what is negative. In looking at what is negative, one of the things that was very fundamental that I saw was that it's a refusal to accept the meaning of negative. And I was looking at the whole concepts around and designs around, you know, the idea itself. And what I've come to, I was, to be honest, I was not, to be honest, I'm being honest. I was actually looking at positive as well, but in looking at negative, the negative is the part that creates a great issue for most of us. Saying, why is it that all these negative things, why is it that this won't happen and that won't happen? Now, one of the meanings of positive is that at the beginning of the word, if you look at it, it says to posit, and positive is connected also to some elements of law, the law, what is morally correct, what is acceptable from a legal standpoint. Now remember that the person and self is also operating within that context. Now one would think that if both self and person, more person has the legal element, is operating within the context of some elements of law, then there should be some connection then to saying that we should be able to create positive outcomes without any delay because it's so connected. But one would think that it would be the positive side of thoughts and the positive side of thoughts and what is being created in our reality that would be the most achieved. But a lot of times it's the negative, and I ask myself, why is that? Why? And what I've come to realize, and this is a hypothetical, this is me just pulling together all the information, and I'm realizing if it's a refusal to accept, that means that one, because we're living in a balanced universe with positives and negatives, that the negatives may be a way of filtering out the things that sometimes we don't want. So if it's filtering out the things that we sometimes, or maybe most times, if not all times, don't want, it may come with it some sort of lesson learning curve, or necessity for you to refuse the information, or not pay attention to it or disregard it. And because it align the positive part of things aligns with a certain level of knowledge about the environment that we live in, if the knowledge is lacking, one would be, and other environmental factors and factors within the design of self, one would be less possibly able to tap into the positive thought patterns. So remember now, when with self and identity and individuals, there are different stimuluses to outcomes, reactions, and emotions. There are so many different things that happen according to self. Now, there are different unique blueprints, even though there may be similarities across the board if you have the correct information. However, we're interacting with different people which are similar to us in some ways, but very unique in their own way. And when we interact with those people or circumstances, it pulls into our existence or our reality. It pulls some form of different experiences. Let's keep it simple like that. Different experiences. And those different experiences may not necessarily be what one is expecting. However, it may also, not may also, it will work in conjunction with the positive and negative thought patterns, as well as the environment and different laws that govern the environment. And when I say laws, it doesn't have to be laws from the blueprint, from the viewpoint, sorry, from the viewpoint of laws within the context of the law, but laws that operate within the universal setting. So when we're interacting with different people and different tangents, and there's so much information, remember there's information coming from different individuals that is also crossing over on your side, even without interacting with those people. So if that information is crossing over, how is it that how would you be able to decipher sometimes what is directly related to you or imagine the magnitude of what information you need to reject, because at the end of the day it's coming from so many different sources. So if there's a lack of understanding of self and the environment, and also factors within the environment that pushes one in the direction of more more positive outcomes, if it pushes one in the direction of more positive outcomes, then it's only logical moving forward that one would have to safeguard oneself. Because what will happen potentially, and I hope I didn't forget my train of thought, but what will happen is that you may find yourself creating a reality that is not related to you at all, but it's everybody else's. Not everybody else is on the scale of every single person in the population of the world, but on the scale of other people's even negative thoughts that are being created as well, are coming in the physical form based on their thinking or their refusal to accept. So where does that leave you? It leaves you in a very vulnerable position, especially if the identity, which is self, which is the individual and the person who you are, conflicts or does not work in conjunction with that environment, because by your very design you're maybe supposed to be in that to learn or get rid of or filter through or just discard anything that does not align with you, which is the greater version of you, which is self. But remember, there's a higher version anyway of you outside of self, but that's a different video. So if you're vulnerable and you're exposed and you lack information, you lack knowledge, remember you're going after these goals. Now the goals you're going after is going to take time, effort, energy, money, strategy, education, investments, this, that, networking. This is not something, it's not a blueprint that you take for granted or it's to be played with on any level. And the reason why it shouldn't be played with is because there are so many risk elements, and there are certain things you can't get back. Well, as far as I know, knowledge wise, but maybe some other aspects of knowledge will tap into that, you maybe. But for me, as far as we know, we can't get back time in this present state of things. And if we can't get back time, there's that is one of the most you can't even put a value on time. You can't really put a value on your higher self, can you? Because it goes outside of the factors of even the material wealth aspect of it. There's so much more to self, but self and the higher self, not self, the identity that is formulated within the constraints of the factors of the environment and the constraints of whatever is embedded in the design. So what do? You have to put a protection mechanism in place, because you see the one of the problems is if you don't know who you are and you don't know what you don't know, then you don't know how to manage or handle certain situations and scenarios that come along. And those situations and scenarios could expose you, which is yourself, and the threat to your advancement, your even your well-being, the threat to your survival. So you want to be really tapped into designing and tailoring. And this is a video I want to put out. Anybody that's watching this video, you guys thinking of putting out the tailored design of tailoring certain things, no problem, you guys go along. I'm sure you will do well at it, but I'm telling you that I'm gonna come back really strong with it because I do value what I'm doing, and I value the people that listen to this channel as well. So so you need a protection mechanism because you're so exposed to other people's dreams, information, realities, rejecting and refusal of information, inaccuracies pertaining to the legal aspects of just operating in the fundamentals of this universal order of things, and other information that is lacking to be able to advance. So it's almost like you have to spiral yourself to some higher level of fast paced learning, unlearning, relearning, and actually even to get to the point of creating something new. So it's only logical, I thought to myself, you have to build a firewall around self. What is a firewall? Let's look at it. What does a firewall do? A firewall, this is according to Google, a firewall is a network security device that monitors and filters incoming and outgoing network traffic based on an organization's previously established security policies. At its most basic, a firewall essentially the barrier that sits between private internal network and public internet. So you remember what they've said here is organizations previously established security policies. Previously established security policies. Those security policies may be in place from the fundamental design of self before any disruptions or exposures. And because of the lack of knowledge and consciousness of what to do actively, it's almost like you're just totally exposed from a public standpoint to other versions of self, but then you have the ability now to create a private internal network system, and that private internal network system will be so designed in line with the greater version of you. What is the purpose of a firewall? A firewall is a component that is used to monitor the incoming and outgoing traffic in a network. The term firewall can be used to refer to hardware or software, but remember our functionalities are very much um, aligned in a similar way, or they're trying to mimic us technologically. What does the firewall protect against? Against firewall provides protection against outside cyber attackers by shielding your computer or network from malicious or unnecessary network traffic. Firewalls can also prevent malicious software from accessing a computer or network via the internet. So basically, not basically, I don't like the word, but yeah, so we can see that the firewall will not only protect you in terms of physically from the public and the private elements of it, but it can protect you from even an online standpoint. But how do you create the firewall? Or when the firewall is created, not even how the firewall is created, but when the firewall is created, how does it affect self? That's what I asked. I was like, why would you build a firewall? That's what it is. But how does the firewall affect self? And it's obvious how the firewall affects self. But it's important that you understand your unique design will alter in line with the firewall, but we're going from the viewpoint of self. And if we look at self, then it's almost like you put a safeguarding mechanism in place to be able to protect yourself from what is not true to your design and your higher self. And this may take you on a journey that is very unexpected. This may take you in a direction that you least expect, because the things that you thought were valuable may not be so valuable anymore, or the things that you had underestimated in value is more valuable to you. And when you're able to protect yourself from attacks from externals, when you're able to protect yourself by creating a firewall, it's almost as if you can come you can interact with other people or circumstances, but it does not affect the core elements of who you are on a higher level. And that's what you want to tap into, because that's what will give you the clarity about your selection mechanism. That's what it's almost like if let's say you had an embedding or an inbuilt firewall from birth, and that was disrupted. If you create a new firewall, it's correctly created, it should go back to the original state of the firewall. Maybe outside of the scope of some levels, because obviously we aren't. Well, I don't know about you, but I'm not. I don't know if you believe in certain things and whatever, but there are certain things that are just beyond us. Whatever you want to call it, universe, really, from a religious perspective, whatever. But I don't speak a lot on religion here. So we want to stick to the importance of protecting ourselves. Why? Because while you're interacting with so many other identities, sometimes you can get lost or trapped in what they're creating, or even your own refusal to accept what others are creating, or who they are in terms of being misaligned with you on the path. Or you're creating because you have another focus that is greater than people at that specific time, or a focus on persons or a person, or looking at what others are doing. So you it's almost like you move away from and also protect yourself in the process. You move away from certain things. It's not even that you move away. You can be in the environment. But on some level, you're better able to, like one person was saying on YouTube tonight, it's like you're better able to manage it. Because not everything that you react to, as he said on the video, not everything you're going to react to in the same way that you used to, because you're more advanced in your thinking. You know what not to give your attention to. You know what needs to be discarded. You're learning about how you operate and react to the environment. And one might think, okay, so what does all of this have to do with goals? It has everything, everything to do with goals. Because when certain circumstances or events occur in your life, you won't attach as much emotion to it. Even though emotion is good and it has its place, but it's as if you learn to filter and stack and access you're in control of the emotions now, not the emotions in control of you, which is what happens to a lot of us. Because the reason why that happens to a lot of us is we get lost or caught up in the lack of knowledge that we have, or the gaps. So there are elements of confusion, and we can get really lost in the whole storyline. But even if you're lost in the storyline, and there's a higher part of you, or there are different elements in your embedded in your design that causes you to go go consciously searching for something that's better, or events or experiences or something that doesn't threaten your well-being but enhances who you are as a person. No, it's the lack of connection between self and your realization of self, or one's realization of self, that causes so much comparison with others. Because the more you tap into self, the more clarity it will bring as to what your achievements, why your achievements work for you, and how you look at achievements from the viewpoint, and also how certain things affect you while it doesn't affect others. Some things will work for you, it doesn't work for others. So you kind of can get a grasp on when not to go in a certain direction because of the firewall. So you want to build a firewall around self, and that firewall will be a protection mechanism that is not, it's judging the information, but it's really, the core thing is not really judging it from the viewpoint of saying this is right, this is wrong, but it's judging it from the viewpoint of saying what I will accept from what I won't accept, that works within the constructs of the environment as well as works within the design of higher self and operating on the higher tangents, and understanding that there's a process involved in that. So you're developing a sense of understanding, overstanding, understanding, of patience with self. Because if the process doesn't, once you have that firewall and there's a process, then you would have, there are other processes that your design is going through as well. But you want to stick to identifying the greater version, the self as an identity, the factors in the environment, as well as how to protect yourself from the other identities that are crossing over within the whole overview of how things work in the universe. And let me, I can't say how things work in the universe, that's a bit broad sided, but you get the gist of it, the everyday life. And you might realize that a lot of what you knew before is not relevant. Or you might realize that there's so much you had, so much more you had to know before you could actually know what works for you or doesn't work for you, before you could actually be able to select carefully what pleases you, what will make you happy. And the reason why sometimes some people are not happy when they get to the outcome is because they didn't identify, they weren't able to project into the future what would actually work for them, not from the viewpoint of what is working for anybody else, what is well, you can extract some of that, but what is interacting or disrupting your focus, but understanding you from the get-go in the game. It can be halfway through any point on the tangent, but you understand you at some point on the tangent, and then that you that you've come to understand, you do know that it aligns properly with who you want to become. And that requires a firewall. Now, this is very important. And at another stage, we can look at, like different aspects of how the firewall would affect self more. You from a tailored standpoint, because there are so many complexities, but it's not that complex. It's actually just keep it simple most of the times, and the answers come from that direction. So, I'm gonna close this video. And I can't explain to you how beautiful, how much this video means to me. I mean, I do love all the videos so far, but this one is like, it's a game changer. It's a few videos. It's funny. This week I did a video on the outdated goals and mindset. That was also, you know, it's almost like it's coming together. It's coming together not from a generic blueprint standpoint, but it's taking on form and life, and that's what we're reaching towards. That's what we're going after. We want the blueprint to be as clear as possible, so much so that it gives it it's it actually has life before it actually becomes live. So I'm Michelle Samuels for Why Goals ID, and once again, thank you for listening, and just keep going with us, and we're gonna get there. We're gonna get there. We're gonna get those dreams. Definitely going after those dreams and making them a reality.